I just assumed that all Chinese adoptees had some type of motivation to slightly connect with either their like Chinese heritage or other adoptees. I kind of thought that everyone cared about that. All adoptees wanted, that community. Um, and I actually was put in contact with another Chinese adoptee at Cal. And I just assumed she wanted to join in between because I was like, why wouldn't she? She obviously feels this way. She obviously wants to be connected with other adoptees. Like, we'll start this club together. And I got lunch with her one day and I told her all of my plans. And she was like, thank you for like meeting me. It was so nice to hear all your stories and experiences. But she was like, I don't like want to have other friends that are Chinese adoptees. Like, I don't feel the need for that community. I don't want to ever learn Mandarin. I don't want to go back to China. Like, there were all these things. And I was like, oh, I just thought that because you were a Chinese adoptee, you cared about all of this and you wanted to get involved, which is not the case.
Hey guys, welcome back to the SituAsian Room, a journey into Asian America. We dive deep into the issues in the Asian American community, from questions like, where are you really from? And representation, to sharing food and our own experiences. My name is Emilie Villaverde.
And I'm Zach Ing. This episode, we bring Izzy Weiss into the SituAsian Room to talk about her national organization, In Between, as well as Izzy's Asian American Adoptee experience and her journey exploring her own identity. This is a super important episode because a lot of Asian Americans are adoptees, and I think there's a lot of things we don't talk about or we don't understand or know when it comes to the adoptee experience as non-adoptees. And I think this is a very eye-opening episode and interview for me. What about you, Em?
Yeah, it was a really good interview with Izzy. I loved having her on the show. We talked a lot about identity because, AAPIs already have some sort of a struggle one way or another with their identity. And, for adoptees, it can be the same exact thing. So we asked a couple questions. She gave some amazing responses. So yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to check out this interview. But before we get into that, Zach, let's do some current events.
Let's do it.
Okay, so starting off, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. actress Chloe Bennett is spearheading a new campaign to increase voter turnout in the AAPI community. And I was reading this the other day. It's really cool what she's doing. So she teamed up with producer Brad Jenkins to relaunch the 2017 campaign Run AAPI. And Run stands for Represent Us Now. And it has a new rebranding with the hashtag The New. And this is a really cool campaign. It's talking a whole lot about the 2020 election and encouraging people from the Asian American Pacific Islander community to come out, make their voices heard, make sure that we're represented, and get them to turn in their ballots and vote, which is super important, especially this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to learn more about it. I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing about it, but campaigns are awesome.
Yeah.
I have never watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I'm not super familiar.
I have not either. I am still like going through everything with the MCU, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ant-Man and the Wasp are the only two that I haven't watched yet. So I'm
That's pretty
getting there.
good. I feel like my only two I haven't watched are the Hulk movie and the second Thor. But
Okay, I also didn't watch the Hulk movies, but I don't know if it really ties in with the the timeline, but
yeah,
it's okay.
I don't know. I feel like it's
Um
supposed to, but I don't know. I
yeah.
think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is canon in that MCU timeline. I don't know. But
Mhm.
anyway, next event.
Yeah, so I guess on a sadder note, after President Trump had been diagnosed with COVID-19, anti-Asian racism in the form of, rhetoric and tweets and conspiracies have spiked again. They're actually up by 85%, which is so sad to see because, we've gone how many months into this pandemic? The AAPI community has gone through so much anti-Asian hate and just racism and just so much struggle with this pandemic and the blame being put on us. It's sad to see after all this time we're still experiencing that.
Yeah, and I mean this 85% number isn't a number we're just making up. It's from the Anti-Defamation League report.
Yeah.
And this is a direct this is a more direct correlation between the rhetoric the president uses and how Asian Americans and Asians are treated, quite frankly, because a lot of people I know who agree with like the quote tough on China like rhetoric, or not the rhetoric, but the idea behind it. The United States should stand up to the Chinese government. They often glaze over and don't understand the impact that the president's rhetoric has, and they often say, "Oh, it's not racist," or "Oh, it's fine," and that's not what he meant by it. I know someone said that to you, Emilie, actually.
Yeah, and
But
it's crazy because people are saying that, oh, what do you mean? It did come from China, so it technically is their fault. But there's a difference between, saying that it started in a location and putting the blame on a specific group of people.
yeah,
And it's sad to see that it's still going on.
I mean, yeah, I'm not surprised in any way. It's just like,
Yeah. I think
but
just reading this article and seeing the numbers, seeing the stats, it
yeah.
it like opened my eyes a little bit.
Yeah, and another thing that happened in the past week is there's a viral video of a Marine in uniform, and he said, "quote as the Honorable Trump said, it was China's fault. China's going to pay." And then he proceeded to use racial slurs and threatened to shoot them if they ever came up to him with his fleet.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I mean, look, it's like a direct line, and this is an anecdotal story, of course, right? You have one case of someone directly, using the rhetoric that the president uses to justify and say hateful things. But what our leaders say, has an impact on how we treat people and see the world.
Definitely.
Yeah. But on a brighter note, we have an awesome interview for y'all coming up next with Izzy Weiss.
Welcome, Izzy, into the SituAsian Room. We're so excited to have you. So let's just start off. Can you give us a little intro background about yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. So my name is Izzy Weiss, and I am a Chinese adoptee. I was adopted when I was 12 months old, born in China, and I grew up in Colorado, south of Denver. Went to high school, predominantly white high school, not really connected with my Asian heritage, or not really thinking that being an adoptee was a huge part of my identity. That kind of changed in my later years of high school, and now currently I am a rising sophomore at UC Berkeley, hoping to study economics or business.
Awesome. So you started an organization called In Between, and I want you to tell us about In Between and its mission and how it all started.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, In Between, we are an organization that unites and supports people who feel they don't strongly align with either their Asian or their American culture and identity. They're somewhere like in between, so hence the name. And I was inspired to start In Between kind of this past year. I started my freshman year of college at UC Berkeley, which is a school that has 40% Asian American population. And coming from a predominantly white high school, that was like more Asians than I'd ever seen in my entire life. Like campus just booming with Asians, and there was a lot more Asian American culture that I experienced on campus and in Berkeley and in the Bay Area. And in high school, I had maybe 3 or 4 friends that were of Asian descent. All my friends were white. And I feel like in my high school, I didn't it's not that I didn't fit in, but there were comments that were made about the way that I look, or stereotypes that I felt like I needed to live up to, and I found myself joking about being Asian and adopted myself, and just kind of using that as a way to fit in with these white people, not in a derogatory way, just like all of my white friends that would make these comments anyways. So I acted predominantly white because I came from a white family. I'm a Chinese adoptee. But then when I went to Berkeley, it was like the exact opposite of what I was experiencing in high school. I was, instead of being like Asian now, I was like too white, and I wanted to join some type of cultural group, but I just didn't feel comfortable joining like Chinese Student Association or Asian American Association, just because I know no Mandarin. I know very little to no like Asian American culture. So I was just like, there needs to be some type of group for people who feel this way, because I feel like there's more people who experience what I was going through and how I felt. And then I was just like, might as well just start my own organization surrounded about this. So that's kind of the inspiration for how it started.
I love that.
Yeah, I know that starting a national organization is a pretty hard thing to do. I'm part of the Filipino Intercollegiate Networking Dialogue, so that's connects all of the Filipino student associations in all the colleges up and down the East Coast as one. And I'm starting a new district for the schools in Florida, so I understand how difficult of a task it is to start a national organization. But right now, I want to go into a little bit of the logistics of it. How many members do you guys have?
Yeah, so okay, it depends what you define as member. So we have a national newsletter that goes out. The goal is every other week, but it's kind of just been once a month, since we're still brand new and we're trying to work everything out. So on our national newsletter list, we have about 200 people signed up, that are getting the emails, that have shown interest in between, want to know about our events. And then we also have different chapters at different campuses across the nation. We have one at University of Florida, University of Illinois, UCSB, Cal, CU Boulder, UT Austin, just to name like a couple of them. And within those, we also have members that are engaged there. But each campus is pretty newly established. So right now we just have like board members at each campus, so 5 there. And then when we host our national events, sometimes we get like 30 people to come to our national Zoom events, and sometimes we have 6 people. So that's kind of like a range of engagement for in between.
That's awesome that you have a pretty good, group formed. Um,
Yeah.
but you are building a community of young Asian adoptees, Asian American adoptees across the country. Can you tell us about what the organization of Asian adoptees looked like before you started your organization?
Yeah, like the atmosphere of kind of like adoptee.
Yeah, kind of
Yeah,
like a breakdown of before versus after you started in between.
okay, yeah, definitely. So I think, well, first of all, In Between is not only for Asian adoptees, it's also open to really anybody who is of Asian descent that feels this way. So, you know, generational Chinese, Asian Americans, um, mixed children like Wasians, Hapas, and then also Asian adoptees. But so kind of, I guess beforehand, it was more separate and segregated, and that's kind of what I hope to like long run is kind of bridge the gap between people who aren't adopted, and people who are, because I feel like um, I can't speak for every Asian adoptee, obviously, so this is just my own personal feelings, but I almost feel like once I tell somebody that I'm adopted, I'm less Asian to them. Like I'm not, oh, I don't count as Asian anymore. Like I'm not included in a lot of like studies and groups on campus and national organizations. So the goal is to bridge that divide and make sure that adoptees feel like they are just as much as Asians as people who aren't adopted, depending on how they feel. There's a few organizations. Adopt Teen is one based in Colorado. FCC, which is Families with Children from China, and there's CCI, Children or Chinese Children International. So there's a couple other organizations that deal with just adoptees, but those are just Chinese adoptees. And the goal with In Between is to kind of like educate people who aren't adopted and have them intermingle and be able to kind of build that community together, like bridge the divide.
I love that.
Thank you.
So when I think of Asian adoptees, I've had like a couple friends growing up who would identify as such, but it seems like a very niche experience. In a way, like that can also be said for like the Asian American community in general. But it's an experience that people share who are like scattered across the country. And you're leveraging the internet to bring these people together. So I'm curious, like, what kind of strategies have you used to build In Between so far?
Yeah, so I just want to preface this by saying, because it's so new, I'm still learning and trying different things, and we're going through kind of a shift actually right now as we speak. The plan was to have committee members at each university and kind of build up each regional organization. And, nothing's ever perfect. And sometimes I put a lot of pressure on myself to make In Between like this amazing thing within its first year. But we held an info session at the Berkeley campus last Wednesday, and we had 2 people come. And I was like, that was really like, it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe this isn't as big as I want it to be. Maybe something's not working. So there's definitely struggles, especially in COVID with everything being online. But some of the strategies, at least for national, that we've done. So I knew probably 25 Chinese adoptees. I met them in 2018 on a trip to Wuhan. We went for like a service trip back to an orphanage, but we all live stateside and we were pretty good friends. We have a group message. So I think in May, when In Between was really new, it started in March and February. But in May, I was like, I had this whole network of friends that are also Chinese adoptees. So why keep this a Berkeley club? Like I could expand it. So I texted this group message. I was like, hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing good. I'm starting this thing called In Between. Like, does anybody want to start them at their own school? Because we're all like either seniors in high school or college students. So from that, I got a few girls to be interested and start chapters at their schools. And then Facebook. Facebook is literally so amazing. I joined all of these Facebook groups that are for Asian adoptees, for Asians. And I was like, hi, everyone. In Between is this organization. We're new, but we want to grow chapters. Is anybody interested? And just people reached out to me that way. And there was like 3 weeks there, I was doing probably coffee chat at night with different people that wanted to learn more about In Between, how they could be involved, or they want to start it at their chapter. And then we got the Instagram page going. So there's a lot of social media, like marketing, you could say, to get the word across. A lot of Google Forms, a lot of Zoom coffee talks, a lot of Facebook messages. So that's kind of the strategy that we took.
Awesome. Okay, so what do you think? You mentioned before that one of the main issues that was the reason why you started In Between was because as soon as they said I'm adopted, it's like it's like they're looked at with a different lens. But what are some other common issues that the Asian adoptee community, experiences?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I guess I want to like clarify that last statement. I think that was how I feel. Like when I tell people I'm adopted, I feel like, oh, are they gonna think that I'm less Asian? I don't know if other adoptees feel that way. Maybe they like are fine and tell everybody like maybe that's not an issue for them. But that's something that I personally feel. Other things that adoptees experience, I would say, there's like common nicknames that we're all called. I'm pretty sure like banana, we're yellow on the outside, we're on the inside. And like, I don't know, like that doesn't offend me, but it's just like, okay, haha, you're so funny. Like I get it. So there's nicknames that we go through. I think something that affected me, I don't know how it affected other Asian adoptees, but I felt like I had this like societal expectation and pressure to, be really good at school, like excel in math, take all these AP classes, especially in high school, just because there's just I think like both of you could probably agree, like there is this expectation that we are all like brilliant and genius and
Like the
super
model
smart. And I
minority
think,
hustle.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I think I like naturally am not this genius, but throughout high school, you know, I don't want to feed into the model minority myth, but all of my Asian friends, they're at UPenn, Georgia Tech, MIT, and Stanford. So they are incredibly hardworking, incredibly smart people. But, you know, I was kind of, I'm Asian. Why am I not doing like excelling like them? And I think throughout high school, I felt like I needed to push myself to be at this standard. And I think if I didn't look the way that I looked, like if I didn't look Asian, I don't think I'd have that pressure on me. But I guess I could argue that's in turn a good thing. Like it's gotten to me to where I am today. It's forced me to be a hard worker. It's allowed me to really enjoy education. But I think, I definitely struggled with like, I have to be as good as the other Asians in my grade. And that was something that came with being an adoptee as well.
Yeah. I can relate to that a little bit, although I'm not an adoptee, but just like I grew up in a very like white town as well. I had like a white stepmom, so like I don't know, I could join in between. um,
You should. I'd love to
um,
have you.
but in my high school, we had like three tiers of math classes, and there was like the higher level, like the standard level, and like the lowest level, which was called math studies. And this is anyone who's ever been in the IB program would know. I don't know if you guys didn't have that, but
I did
um,
AP.
yeah.
I did too.
But all of the Asian kids were expected to be in the higher level, and I was not gonna do that because I was not on the track to do that, and I was not good at math. And so I was in like the middle one, and people would ask me all the time, like, "What's our homework?" or like, "What was this?" And one time it was in Spanish class, and I had a cool teacher. Like my teacher and I were tight, so I knew I could get away with this. But this kid asked me, and I stood up and I yelled, like, just because I'm Asian doesn't mean I'm in like this math class. And the whole class was like, "What the hell?"
Like, oh my
And
god, you
then
just
my
popped
teacher
off.
was just laughing because like it was I not being serious, but when I yelled, but I did it was funny, but no, I feel that the pressure to perform and be good at these certain things, and it's like we shouldn't be subjected to that. But I guess a plus side is that it forces you to keep up, but it maybe there's a trade off in like how healthy that is.
Hmm. Definitely.
I really love that this is just one of the traits that your new organization is working on. I love that that's part of your mission. But so moving on, I know that you guys are a new organization and you're just starting out, but what's your vision for in between? Down the road, what are you hoping for?
Yeah. um, a lot of people ask me that, and in all honesty, I don't have like super long vision. Like I just wake up and I'm like, what am I gonna do today for in between? Which is overwhelming and a lot in itself. But I think one thing that I want to have like 100%, I don't know how far down the line, but I want to set up an in between scholarship fund for kids and adoptees who want to go on heritage tours, who want to go on these trips that bring them back to, where they're born, the country that they're born, who like financially aren't able to. Because for me, going back to China when I was a junior in high school was really like the hitting point and the point in my life where I was like, I can no longer just like pretend that I'm not adopted. Like this is who I am. And although it was 12 months of my life in China, it's gonna affect me for the rest of my life. And I need to be grateful. And it was just such an impactful point in my life. But, you know, like international plane tickets are not cheap. And like these service trips are not cheap. Any heritage tour that you're gonna go on, like it's definitely a financial burden or like I wouldn't say investment, but like something that not everyone can afford. But just making some type of program where we can give people who wouldn't necessarily have this opportunity, like being able to help them and assist them with that. Because if you're an adoptee and you want to, I think it's a great experience that they should have.
I love that idea. I know. So, sophomore year, I was supposed to go on a service trip to the Philippines. And one, it was for service, which, I'm all about. And the reason why we never ended up going was because it was just way too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
The timing was okay, like, but the problem was trying to raise the funds to go on this service trip. And I haven't been back to the Philippines since 2013, so I was really banking on this service trip to, do some good for the Philippine community, but also to reconnect with my culture, because when I went back in 2013, I wasn't connected with my culture. I totally took that experience for granted, and I was hoping to make it up with this service trip. And I definitely think that it's important to, try and go back to your roots and really, just I really hope that you are able to get this scholarship going, because I just think it's so important. But
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
all right, hold that thought, guys. So we're going to take a quick break for commercials, but we'll be back soon with more from Izzy. All right, welcome back, guys. Again, we have Izzy here in the SituAsian Room. We're just going to jump right back into this interview. So for this segment of the SituAsian Room, we want to focus on your upbringing and the Asian adoptee experience. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your upbringing, your background, and I know earlier in the episode you mentioned a service trip that you went on. So tell us about that too.
Yeah, for sure. So let's see here. My upbringing. Yeah, I lived South Denver for 18 years of my life. I have an older brother who's also adopted, but he's a domestic adoptee, so he's also Caucasian. And I think, I had a pretty normal childhood, nothing super out of the ordinary. But I think the main thing was just that I didn't really care that I was adopted. It was something that, I was like, okay, fine, but like I don't need to explore this. I don't need to learn Chinese culture. Like, I don't know, I took Spanish in elementary school and I had the option to take Mandarin, but I was like, it doesn't matter. So yeah, I think growing up, not that I forgot that I was adopted, because obviously, like, you look in the mirror, you don't look like everybody else, but it just wasn't something that I cared enough to really explore. And then, let's see, I got involved, or my mom sent me this newsletter from CCAI, which is the adoption agency that I went through. They're based in Denver, and there's like Chinese adoptees all over the world from this adoption agency. And they sent out a newsletter, and there was this trip called AgBost. I don't really know what it stands for, but basically every summer they bring like 25 Chinese adoptees back to different provinces and different orphanages in China. And my mom was like, hey, like, check this out. Maybe you should go. Like, maybe you should apply to it. And I was like, okay, why not? Like, I want to go to China. That kind of sounds fun. It sounds interesting, like, to meet other adoptees. So yeah, I applied for this trip. I got accepted. It wasn't like a prestigious thing. It was just a little application. So the summer of 2018, I flew to Wuhan with, I think, 20-ish other adoptees from all different states in America. And it was a service trip for 5 days. So we stayed in we didn't stay in an orphanage, but we stayed like near an orphanage in a hotel. And every day we'd walk over and play with the kids and everything. But then we also were able to do some touring in China. So we went to like the Great Wall, things like that. Yeah, it was really fun and really cool, because I'd never been out of the country besides being born in China. So it's really cool to see that different perspective and just the way that life is. But yeah, I think the trip was kind of, like I said earlier in the podcast, the turning point of my relationship with my adoptee identity, I guess, because I realized that how do I word this? So I think going to the orphanage, I thought that I was going to be playing with these little girls and boys, like super fun. And we just play games and dance and sing, which we did a lot of that, and it was really great. But what I didn't expect was to be like playing with 17-year-olds. There are a lot of older kids also, and I was 17 at the time. And there was a language barrier, but it was like the weirdest experience, because I was like in this room of like adoptees that had been adopted that were Chinese, and we all looked the same because we're all Chinese, but then like 17-year-olds that were like raised in this orphanage and never were adopted, and just we're the same age, same beginning storyline, but like literally worlds apart, experiences apart. Like I live in America now. I get to go to a great university. I get an education. I have a family, you know, and that was the biggest thing. And although there was a language barrier, just realizing like these kids have been here since I was here. Like it was just like the craziest experience. And I think I realized that I'm so grateful to have a family and to be able to have opportunity in America. And I came back from that trip and I was like, I can no longer just be like, I'm adopted, it doesn't matter, because it does matter. Like I have a family, and a lot of the people in the orphanage still don't. And I think that's really, ever since then, I've been thinking about my identity more. Like in between happened, I wrote all my college essays about like my experience and what I was going through, and it's a journey, and I'm still learning, and I, you know, am still meeting other adoptees and their experience, and it's like a really cool thing that I get to experience. But that's kind of like my turning point was that trip to Wuhan.
Understanding our identity is a common crisis that we, as most people, go through, right? And as Asian Americans, it can be complicated, but in a little different way. And Asian American identity is a common theme of the show, and we want to dive into your experience. So, what was like especially difficult for you as an adoptee to understand and to forge your identity? I know it's like a constant thing we're always like working on.
Everyone's like, who am
Yeah,
I?
Yeah.
All
but
the
like
time.
especially as young people, but at this point, I would say.
I think something that I struggled with, um, I don't know, it comes in waves. Like sometimes I like to keep things pretty lighthearted because some adoptees can be a little like, I was abandoned, like so sad, and like, you know, side of the road, and it gets a little emotional. And I get like there's a time and a place for that, but I try to be more outgoing and lighthearted about this identity crisis and like who I am. I think something that was hard though was kind of realizing, I don't remember how this like thought got put in my head when I was like a junior or senior in high school, but you just carrying a baby in your womb and like you're part of them, and like I whew, am I gonna get emotional? Oh my gosh. Just like knowing that there's somebody out there that probably like, I would say once a week at least is probably like, oh yeah, like I have a kid that is somewhere out there, and like they literally have no idea if I'm alive, where I am. And I think that's the scariest thing, is like I am blood related to somebody, to two people that are I'm most likely never gonna meet. And I think um it's not, I don't struggle with that thought, but sometimes I think about that and it's like, damn, like that's insane. You know, I'm literally never going to meet these people, and I'm never going to know biological and genetic traits. I think I have a big family on my mom's side. I have 15 cousins over there, and they're all biologically related to each other. And I just, you know, over the summer when we hang out, they're always like, "Oh, you definitely have grandpa's nose," or like, "You get your athleticism for so and so," and blah blah blah. And you know, I just sit there and I'm like, "Oof, I can never say any of this." And I think like I love singing, and I love, you know, just like certain traits about me and like the way I look and the things that I enjoy, and like my mannerisms. I'm always like, who does that come from? My AP United States history teacher, my junior year of high school, he had a child, his daughter is adopted from Mexico, and we kind of had a conversation one day about that because he brought his daughter to Mexico one day to meet her biological family. And he told me, he was like, it was so crazy because she has some biological siblings, and when they were together, he was like, you could tell that they were biologically related, just the way that the way they stand and the way that they laugh. He was like, it was so similar. And after that conversation, I was just like, wow, I wonder how my birth mother laughs, or like if she likes singing, or, you know, just like weird things like that. I wish I could know. So that's something that I think about. I don't know if it makes me have an identity crisis, but just a identity thing that I think about quite a bit. Not quite a bit, but I think about.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about searching for them?
I think in the future, but I think where I am in my life right now, I I want to like really understand and grasp just like the entire concept of meeting my birth parents if that happened. And I think right now, although I'm, learning more and more educated and more in touch with who I am than I was 2 years ago, there's more and more like throughout the years. And I just want to wait until a point later where I just have different thoughts and feelings about who I am. And I also think just like being a college kid and trying to start in between, like it's a big process. It's a time consuming process. And there is about like less than a 1% chance that, I will find them. And I don't want to put myself through that like emotional stress and all of that thinking when I'm like trying to take classes or start, an organization. So I think down the line I do want to, but I don't think now is the time for me to.
So we mentioned this earlier in the episode that an important moment in your life in understanding your identity was going to college, and I can definitely relate to you. When I first went to university as a freshman, I wasn't in touch with my Asian culture at all. I grew up in a predominantly white area. I think I was like one of maybe two or three Filipinos in a graduating class of 430 students. Um, and it wasn't until my freshman year when I accidentally stumbled upon the Filipino Student Association when I really connected with my culture again. But one thing that I want, and I know that you had the same experience, but one thing that I want to talk to you about is the dynamic between you and other Asian American students, at Berkeley. Just because you mentioned that you grew up in a predominantly white area. So what was it like when you first entered college and you just found this new community?
Yeah. Um, well, I just remember this is not super related to your question, but I remember when my mom and I first landed in SFO. Uh, we got a rental car. She was dropping me off on my dorm first day. I was super excited, and just like driving on the highway in San Francisco, I would like look over at the people driving, and they were all Asian, and I'd be like, "Mom, like." I was literally like, Mom, look, like literally every person that's driving is Asian. And it was just like, now I think it's normal and it's totally, I just like gotten used to it. But I literally would never see Asian people in my hometown. And I think like that was crazy. I was like, oh my God, like, look, that one's Asian too. And it was just like a crazy experience. And I think just like little, I want to say Asian American like culture things. I didn't know like boba. I had boba once, and it's literally like ingrained in Berkeley culture. There's like a million boba shops with like the tiny, like 3 blocks. So like I don't. Maybe some people wouldn't consider that like culture, but I consider that like Asian American culture.
What's it?
For sure.
Definitely. So I think like getting used to that was kind of like different because okay, this is like a really niche, weird thing, but I remember, those Facebook pages that are like class of 2023, like introduce yourself, and everyone's like, my name's blah blah, I'm from blah, like I'm really into this music, I'm down to like hang it or like night out or stay in, like that like generic thing.
Yeah.
Because I was choosing between University of Denver, which is in Colorado, which is pretty like predominantly white, and then Berkeley. And it was so crazy to see the differences because everyone in the DU one was like, I really love like vanilla lattes, and these are my favorite artists, and like I do blah 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 blah. And then seeing the difference when I would go onto the Berkeley page, it was like I get boba all the time, and these are my favorite artists. It's just, like the culture was different there, and everyone would say like their ethnicity, but like obviously at a school like University of Denver, people aren't going to be like, I'm German and Italian, like they don't really say that. So I think that was just a cool experience, like getting that diversity and that Asian culture there. Um, this is such a far tangent from
No,
what
no,
you're
it's good.
No.
Keep going.
but I guess just like the culture at Berkeley. What was the original question that you asked me? Sorry.
I just wanted to get to know a little bit about that transition of you being more connected with the Asian American community. So you're actually right on point.
Okay, great. Yeah, just things like boba, anime, the artists that people listen to, the things that people joke about, like everyone jokes about, oh, you gotta take your shoes off before you go in the house, or just like very subtle things like that. Like I understand those jokes now because a lot of my friends are Asian American, but like I never lived through them, or like, oh, my parent, like you're allowed to like pursue your passion in art, like what? And like I understand that that's like a joking point, but my parents would be down if I wanted to pursue art. They'd be like, hell yeah, like just because there's a difference there. So I think like funny culture things are very different. Um, and I've gotten used to it, and it's interesting because I have like this weird outsider perspective where I understand both jokes now, but like I don't like relate to the jokes, you know?
Yeah, no, I get it. I remember my first boba experience with like college friends, and they're being like, so some days they would be like, oh, I'm going to this place to get boba, do you want to come with? Or hey, before this meeting I'm making a stop, does anyone want anything? And I was like, oh, I like, because the only correlation I had with that was coffee. And then just the complete dynamic that changes when I was started hanging out with people from my Asian American Student Association, and it's not coffee. They ask if you want boba, or if anyone wants to come out for dinner and try this, like try a ramen shop. It's
Yeah.
that experience is, I never knew that, just because I also was like, I didn't really tap into an Asian American community until I came to college. But I think it's awesome. I loved hearing that.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think so something interesting happened. So my friend from high school, he's president of Chinese Student Association at Georgia Tech. And he told me, he was like, hey, you should join like CSA at Georgia Tech this semester. And I was like, I don't go to Georgia Tech. Like, what the heck? And he was like, well, all of our events are going to be online. Like, just come to one. And I was like, okay, why not? Like, a good way to meet people. And we did Kahoot trivia, like through Zoom. And I felt so awkward because it was just like this whole feeling of in between because it was CSA. There were all of these culture references. It was like a box of green tea that looked weird and it had like Chinese characters. And it was like, what is this box? And it was like Band-Aids, green tea. It had like all these options, but like you had to know Mandarin to understand. And I was like, and I literally said Band-Aids and it was green tea and everyone knew it was green tea because it was like a popular brand. And I was the only one who said Band-Aids. And I was just like, sorry, like this is exactly why in between exists because I don't know any of this. And then they were like songs, they would play song snippets and they're like, who is, like what artist sings this song? And I was like, oh my god, I do not know any of this. So it's just like another example of like why in between is where I belong.
I love that.
I love that. So something we want to ask is like, what's something you think most people don't understand about the adoptee experience that they should know?
The adoptee experience or like the Asian adoptee?
Either one.
Okay. I think I didn't even know this before I met a girl at Berkeley, but I just assumed that all Chinese adoptees had some type of motivation to slightly connect with either their like Chinese heritage or other adoptees. I kind of thought that everyone cared about that. All adoptees wanted, that community. And I actually was put in contact with another Chinese adoptee at Cal, and I just assumed she wanted to join in between because I was like, why wouldn't she? She obviously feels this way. She obviously wants to be connected with other adoptees. Like, we'll start this club together. And I got lunch with her one day, and I told her all of my plans, and she was like, thank you for like meeting me. It was so nice to hear all your stories and experiences. But she was like, I don't like want to have other friends that are Chinese adoptees. Like, I don't feel the need for that community. Don't want to ever learn Mandarin. I don't want to go back to China. Like, there were all these things. And I was like, oh, I just thought that because you were a Chinese adoptee, you cared about all of this and you wanted to get involved, which is not the case. And I think other people need to know that also, like, every adoptee obviously has their own opinions about like how much culture they want to explore, how like do they even care about meeting other Asian adoptees? Because I met people that are like, oh yeah, when I was younger, I was put in like adoptee friend groups, but I didn't really like any of them. And the only common bond that we shared was that we're both adopted. But then I look at that and I'm like, the only common bond, like that is a big common bond. And I really wanted that. So I was kind of shocked when she told me that. And she was super like nice to talk to me. And it was still a great conversation, but I didn't realize that like some adoptees just don't, this isn't the space that they need.
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, before we let you go, Izzy, we ask every interviewee in the Situation Room a set of questions. So I'm just gonna go right into it. What do you think it means to be AAPI or an Asian adoptee?
That's like asking, what does it mean to be Mexican, Hispanic? What does it mean to be African American? What does it mean to be Caucasian? And like, I don't know how any of those groups would answer that, because I think there's just so many different perspectives in each group that there isn't like.
How would you answer it though? You don't have to answer for everyone. You should answer for you.
For me, yeah. What does it? What do I? What does it mean for me to be an Asian adoptee? I guess then.
Or just an Asian American.
Or an Asian American. I think.
Yeah.
Being involved in the community and being aware of Asian American culture, different like socioeconomic issues. You could even put like political issues in there. That was probably for the AAPI. But it's also interesting because a lot of the social, cultural, political issues that come with being Asian American, I feel excluded from also. So it's weird because I feel like I want to be educated about these. Like, for example, if you talk about, I love Hassan Minaj and like Patriot Act, which is on Netflix, but he did this great episode about voter participation among Asian American communities. And there's just, besides Andrew Yang, which 2020, like there was no candidate that really targeted Asian Americans. And yes, like what, 5-6% of the Asian population, but like we're growing every day, and our voices are definitely important. And he just talked about how they're not really targeted. So voter turnout is really low because like language barriers, they're not targeted, things that they care about are not addressed. But so I like learned about that issue and I'm like, that's so interesting. I want to help that. But I'm also like, I can't relate to that issue because my families are targeted because I have white parents and they have, you know, Caucasian political agendas. And so I think being an AAPI is like being cognizant and aware and knowledgeable about certain things that happen. And then doing what I can from my kind of outside perspective to help and build a community and involve people.
I really like that answer, because I relate to that about like the voter like reach out and stuff, because like on the language aspect at least, because my family all speaks English fluently. Like I'm a third generation, you know, Asian American, so it's like I don't even know like Cantonese or Mandarin, but there are some things you can't relate to. But one of the beautiful things, but what makes it challenging to organize Asian Americans, is how diverse we are. And whether that's in experiences, like even the people right here, you know, like between the three of us, like we have such different experiences, but we're all, you know, technically Asian American. And then, you know, that looks different for like people from South Asia, and, you know, the list goes on. But our next question is something that kind of unites us. But we want to know, what is your favorite Asian dish?
I think I really love Pad See Ew. There's at Berkeley we have this like strip mall called Asian Ghetto, and it's just like this big like block that has like every different type of Asian food in it. Has boba, has like sushi, Korean barbecue, just anything you could ask for. And there's one place like in the back left corner, I can think of it, They make like the best pad see ew. So that's my favorite dish.
I love just Thai food. I have been craving it for the longest time. So when you said that, it just brought back a whole bunch of cravings that I kind of just pushed down because quarantine and I haven't been able to go out and eat Asian food.
Mm-hmm.
But oh my goodness, I love pad see ew and I love pad Thai.
It's a good one. What about you guys? What are your favorite dishes?
Oh, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna just. I can't pick, but I'm gonna go with tasubao or pork buns. Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm always going to be biased to Filipino food, just because that's who I am. So, pancit, which is stir-fried noodles, lumpia, lechon, which is the roast pig. But
Mm.
I also just, based on the cravings and the food that I haven't had in forever, I really miss pho. I miss soup and noodles. It's
Yeah.
just, I think of pho, and I also really miss dim sum. So, like, as you can see, like, I just miss everything right now
Yeah.
because of the pandemic, I haven't been able to really eat
Yeah.
a
All
lot.
the food. Yeah. So a funny story about not pad thai, pho. So I had pho like sophomore year of high school, or whatever, and it was really good. So I came home and I was like, "Mom, there's this thing called pho. We're gonna make it." But my mom's white; she doesn't really know what it is. I honestly don't even know what it is. But I was like, it's just rice noodles and this broth and everything. So we've like taken our own spin on it. So when we have fun now, it drives me insane. But they like, because I don't know if this is a white people thing, but like they chop the noodles up really small and they like eat it with a fork. And I'm like, nice. And we put like broccoli and red bell peppers in it and just like things that normally aren't in pho. And it's like definitely not pho, but the idea is there. So like, I think
Yeah.
whenever I like introduce foods to my parents, they like put their own like,
My grandmother does that too with ramen. She'll like with the instant ramen, she'll take it and she bangs it on the table and breaks up all the noodles.
and yeah, I don't like that. I
I don't
like
understand why.
like when you get like a lot, you pick up chopsticks like this long.
Yeah, you pick it
That's
up.
good about eating noodles.
Mhm, that's the fun part.
That is the fun part about food. I feel like my mom does that. Where like we'll try something new. She'll go, I could use like the sauce from this on this, and then it just becomes something new.
And you're
Uh-huh.
good.
All right, next question. Do you have any Asian role models?
Um, I was thinking about this a lot. So I really like Hassan Minaj because he's funny and he is able to connect really important issues with comedy. And I think that's important because I like laughing. And also, you have to be lighthearted. You can't be like, everything in the world is wrong and like everything sucks. And like, you have to be like decently lighthearted about it when you think about things, or you just get like really sad. So I love how he's able to, combine the two. And also he has a comedy on Netflix also called Homecoming King. And like, first of all, it's so funny. I like peed my pants watching it. He's so great. But he tells this one story about he went to homecoming with this girl, and I think she was white, if I remember correctly. And he shows up, he rides his bike in his suit. I can just imagine like little like teenage son, but he gets there and he rings the doorbell, and the mom answers and is like, "Oh, like, did the girl not tell you? We just don't think that it would be a great idea for you to take homecoming pictures with her." And she was a white family, and like everybody was white, her entire white family was there. And she was like, "Not to be racist, like we're not racist. We just don't know if we want you to take pictures because her family's there." And he like that hit me, and he threw that into a comedy, and it was like the and then he like made some jokes about it later, but just he puts really important messages in all of his work. And I think I love that about him. So he's probably one of my like role models. I really enjoy his work. And then also Michelle Phan. I don't watch a whole lot of her YouTube anymore, but I just remember she was probably one of the first people when I was younger. Like, you watch all these YouTubers when you're in middle school, and they're like, how to do a smoky eye, and like how to do this and that. And I was like, I have a monolid. Like, this is not working for me.
Yes.
And she was one of like probably the only YouTuber at the time where I would watch her videos and be like, we have the same eyes. Like, and I think for that reason, like representation is very important, and just like her little, I'm not very good at makeup, and I didn't really wear makeup at the time, but it just like watching them, and I just really enjoyed like seeing somebody on YouTube doing makeup that looked like me.
I love that answer because I think about this question too because Zach and I never get to answer these questions. We're always the ones asking it. But for me, it's definitely the Asian women that I would like, the Asian women YouTubers that were popular back when we were middle school, early high school. Because I remember watching Michelle Phan's videos, and I don't know if you know the channel I Like Whaley. They did makeup videos for small eyes and monolids, and that's the first time that I looked at it and I was like, this person, like, this is an Asian girl that's doing makeup tutorials for people with smaller eyes. And that's the first time that I ever related to someone in the media, and I thought it was incredible.
I know, exactly, and that's like why it's so good. Like, I know there's a lot of controversy around Mulan right now, but like the representation is there, and Crazy Rich, okay, arguably there, and then like Crazy Rich Asian, like at least we're seeing people that look like us, you know? And
yeah, exactly.
that's like the coolest part. Like, I don't know, it's just representation is very important.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm also a big Hasan Minhaj fan. Like, I really like what you said about how he takes like things that are sad and terrible, but he makes them funny.
Yeah.
Or like entertaining and like interesting to listen to. And he's so good at like just like breaking down arguments and explaining things that are absurd.
Yeah, and what I love also is I'm like inspired after every episode, and I'm like, I feel like I want to be a better human and a better person for any of these issues, like food waste. All right, we're gonna like start a compost bin, guy. Like we're gonna do that, or like fashion waste. Okay, I'm gonna like stop fast fashion, or like he makes it inspirational in a way that you want to change for the better and you want to help these issues. And I think this is a little bit off topic, but I think sometimes people like get caught up in the negative issues, and then you feel like shit after you read an infographic or you watch a video. You're like, damn, like the world sucks, everything's terrible, I hate this and this, like is this the way things are? And like there's just hatred, and I think he's able to like take these negative things, like I said earlier, and like I just feel so motivated after watching them. Even though it's like the same topic, he's able to spin it in like a positive light, and I think that's what we need, especially in this time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So to wrap up the interview, we want to ask, how can people connect with you if they want to get involved in In-Between or anything else?
So if you want to get involved in In-Between, you can follow us on Instagram at InBetweenNational, no spaces, no underscores or anything like that. And then we have a link in our bio that has links to all of our upcoming events. And then we also have a newsletter link that you can sign up to get our newsletter if you want to hear more about our events and how to get involved. We also, on that Instagram page, advertise all of the different chapters of In-Between at the different regional locations. That's like all the campuses. And if you want to start your own chapter of In-Between at your campus, that's amazing. You can email us at inbetweennational@gmail.com. You could also DM us on Instagram at InBetweenNational. It's all InBetweenNational. You can follow us you can like us on Facebook at InBetween, and you can find us on LinkedIn at InBetween. So yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay, so thank you again to Izzy Weiss for taking the time to join us in the SituAsian Room. Guys, we have talked about a lot in this episode. If you guys are interested in anything that was mentioned during the interview, check out our show notes for this episode on our website, www.situasianroom.com. But yeah, that wraps up our interview with Izzy. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and like reaching out. I know it's a little bit different because it's not, it's related to Chinese adoptees, but I'm really glad and happy that you reached out. So happy to be on the show.
Oh, awesome. We're so excited to have you. I mean, it was really nice to have you because, I mean, this is a part of the Asian American experience too. So we want to highlight that.
Hey, welcome back to Dish It Out. So last week, Zach and I brought some dishes from our own cultures to the Dish It Out table. but it's challenge week, and Zach and I challenged each other to look up different dishes from the AAPI community. And like always, I'll go first. This week, Zach challenged me to do some research on kai pen, and I've never heard of this dish before. Zach, I don't know if you've heard of it or if you've even tried it before.
I've not tried it. I've heard of it, but I have not tried it.
This is a snack that originates from Laos, and it's made from freshwater green algae, garlic, and it's usually topped with vegetables like tomatoes and onions and sesame seeds. This dish is super healthy. It's packed with different vitamins and minerals, and it's vegan. So a lot of people traveling throughout Asia, from what I've researched, actually will have kai pen if they're vegan because it's super easy to pack, and it's very similar to nori or, dried seaweed, and people will just snack on it. I've looked up pictures. I love Google Images because a lot of these dishes that we do on Dish It Out, most of them I've never had or I've never heard of before. So I usually just look up what the dish looks like. And yeah, this actually looks a lot like dried seaweed. But it looks really good. It really does look like the dried seaweed, and I mean, I don't really know a whole lot about it, but all I know is that it has, some people say that it has like a bit of a bitter taste to it, but it's a savory snack like nori. Um, and you can, yeah, some people will do it differently in terms of like what they dress it with, or whether it's different vegetables, or sometimes people will add like, I saw somewhere that people do like fish sauce with it or something like that, but it looks really cool.
Wait, isn't seaweed algae? I feel like it is.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I
I
don't,
don't know a whole lot.
because like usually, this is a weird thing I just remember from like high school biology, but like algae is a protist, right? And
Mhm.
the they can be either multicellular or single cellular, and like algae, we think of like green stuff growing on glass as like single cellular, but like seaweed's weird because it's multicellular.
Yeah.
Um, but I I do love dried seaweed.
Yeah, so the way that it's prepared is like the the algae will wash up on shore, and people will, I guess the term is harvest. They'll harvest it and they'll dry it in sheets.
Hmm.
And once it's completely dried, they cut it up into individual squares, and that's
Ooh.
it, and it's like bare form, and then people dress it up. um I mean, I don't really know a whole lot about it, like I said, but it when I think of this, I immediately go to nori, and I'm sure like people like will also put like salt and pepper on it just to give it a little bit of more taste,
Hmm.
but honestly, it threw me off a little bit when they said fresh water, like green algae, but then I saw that it looked like seaweed, and I was like, oh, this looks pretty cool. Like, I definitely want to try it.
That sounds really good. Algae is the future. Like I saw this whole thing on like seaweed farming, and they have like lines of it in the ocean,
Hmm.
and like you go on a boat and you harvest it, but like there's not a huge American appetite for seaweed and like algae type snacks, so it's like there's not a big demand for it. But what happens is like algae is a carbon sink when it grows, and so like it sucks up a lot of the carbon dioxide that's like emitted into the water, because like when we have greenhouse gas emissions, the gas exchange from the surface of the ocean actually exchanges that and holds a lot of the carbon dioxide in our oceans. And so
Hmm.
like growing seaweed takes a lot of like the carbon and stuff out of the water, and it's a delicious snack.
Yeah, I mean, it from there's like there are different websites that I use to do some research on this dish, and it tastes, yeah, it's, oh, actually, from what I remember, it's a little bit bitter, but it also has a sweet note to it.
Mm,
um and it's very aromatic.
interesting. Oh, we gotta
Hmm.
get some. Um, yeah.
I think it's used like similar to how nori is, and they use it, in different dishes, like just like to add to different dishes, or it can be eaten by itself.
Ooh, I went to the like Korean grocery store recently, and I bought like a bunch of sheets of seaweed, and I can't read
Korean, so I don't know what it says, but I just saw the picture and it was seaweed, and I bought a bunch of it. And my sister ate most of it. I'm kind of mad, but I have to get more. uh, but yeah, algae is a great snack. You actually challenged me to chicken satay. Chicken satay is amazing. There's a lot of different types, like depending on the country, but like the most iconic are like Thai and Malaysian.
Yes.
And so like for uh, Malay, it's like the chicken's marinated in sometimes lemongrass, shallots, coriander, cumin, turmeric, and for Thai it's usually coconut milk and fish sauce. But like lemongrass is such an awesome ingredient.
I love it.
It's
So good.
very strong, but that's what makes it great is the marinade, and then you put on a skewer, and then you roast it, and so I can't have the sauce because there's peanuts in it. But for the Malay version, and I think the Thai version also has peanuts in it for the sauce. But that's made of galangal, chilies, lemongrass, shallots, garlic, and tamarind. A lot of spices.
I'm so sorry, Zach. I've challenged you to 2 dishes that have peanuts in it.
I know it's
But-
okay. It's okay.
Because I'm about to say again, I love chicken satay and I love it with the peanut sauce. So, Thai restaurants, I don't know what it is about it. Like, I've tried like peanut sauce in a bottle, and it's
Mhm.
just not as good as when you get it from a restaurant. And there was one restaurant that I went to, and they said that they got it from the bottle too. It didn't taste like it was from the bottle. It tasted like it was homemade, and it was so good.
Oh,
But I personally like the Thai version of chicken satay better. I like how it's cooked in the coconut milk and fish sauce just because it adds that creaminess, like a slight like subtle creamy taste to the chicken.
mhm.
And it has like a fuller taste. But this is it's iconic. It started, I believe, from what I know about chicken satay. It started in Thailand, and then it moved its way out to other parts of Asia, and so many different cultures will take chicken satay and add their own twist to it, whether it's different spices or the different sauces that's paired with it.
Mhm.
Classic Asian dish. I love it.
Yeah. No, but the thing with the Malaysian version, which I personally tried, I haven't had the Thai one, but Malaysian food is awesome because it's like you can tell where the influences come from because you have a lot of like South Asian influences with like the spices and then like
Mhm.
East Asian influences. It all mixes together to make a beautiful dish.
Also, yeah. I mean, what I love about Dish It Out is that Zach literally gives us the entire recipe every time he talks about a challenge dish. He gives us every single ingredient. But what I love most about chicken satay is the when you mentioned the lemongrass, I love the flavor of lemongrass. And the chilies, I've had chicken satay with um Thai chilies just
Mhm.
sprinkled on top and just that extra heat. I know you can't do spice, Zach, but that extra kick with the Thai chilies, it's amazing.
Yeah.
We usually order a platter because in a lot of restaurants that I've been to, it's served as an appetizer, and I share it with my mom, my dad, and my sister, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I love it. Like lemongrass, and so like combined with the shallots, I've actually made like marinades with lemongrass and shallots before, and like you can't hold it under your face because your face will just sting because it's so potent, but it's so good, and that's where the flavor comes from. Yeah, but as always, we want to hear from you guys, and we need you to send us your recipes because we want to share them on Dish It Out, whether that's through our website or here on the segment. Send it to us via social media or submit it to us on our website, and we'd love to get to know more of the Asian American diaspora and the cuisine within.
Yeah, guys, definitely check out our website. Check out the Dish It Out blog. We have all of our recipes posted on there. We talk about a lot of the dishes that we talk about here on the podcast. And we also have blog posts from other people trying to showcase their own dishes and recipes, as well as different video clips. And it's so much, so much more than this podcast. So definitely check it out. But that wraps up Dish It Out for this week.
Thank you again to Izzy Weiss for coming into the Situation Room, and thank you all for tuning into this episode. The Situation Room is produced by Crimson Planet Media. As always, make sure to check out our website, situationroom.com, follow us on Instagram, and like us on Facebook at The Situation Room for more content. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube or the platform you're using to listen to our show. If you can, give us a rating too. It really helps us a lot.
Yes. Also, guys, we have a newsletter. So go onto our website and click on the little newsletter tab at the very top and sign up today. You'll be receiving all of our show's updates as well as exclusive content. But as always, we want to hear from you guys. So send us messages and dish it out recipes through our website, slide into our DMs on Instagram, send us messages on Facebook. Let us know what you want us to talk about next in the SituAsian Room. But for now, thank you for joining us on this step of our journey through Asian America. Once again, I'm Emilie Villaverde.
And I'm Zach King. So, same time next week?
Yeah, same place?
Yep, let's do it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, I'm gonna shut it up. We're all good. Good job.
Yay! It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.